Will, talk to me.
ABC Tuesdays.
They took his daughter. She's coming home alive.
Will Trent, the series critics are calling powerful must-see TV, continues to thrill.
Shouldn't we strategize before we go in there?
If we screw up this case, a cop killer walks free.
With its most dramatic and heart-racing season yet.
GBI!
Help me!
Get down!
Will Trent, all new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Welcome back to Fine Tooning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings on the industry you can regularly read over on The Wrap, and whose musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can listen to on Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. He and I are recording this week's show on Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, and folks, I apologize for the delay in getting this week's show out the door, but if you have been paying attention to the news coming from out west over the past week, then you know that Southern California has been besieged by this series of wildfires, which so far have leveled more than 12,000 structures. We're talking homes and businesses, and scorched more than 60 square miles, not to mention displacing some 88,000 people who have either lost their homes or are still dealing with mandatory evacuation orders from fire-threatened areas. And among the folks who's been living through this incredibly stressful situation is my co-host, who you've had a go bag pack since what, last Wednesday?
Yeah, go bag and a full, suitcase, and then also a work bag with my computer and whatnot, hard drives, and
God,
yeah,
okay.
it's been an interesting time. Yeah, very much on edge. I think tonight will be the kind of end of it, hopefully.
Okay, because I was just reading about the Santa Anas are supposed to kick up again tonight through Wednesday morning.
Correct.
Okay, so
yeah, it's been an interesting time, but people have said that this is as bad as it's ever been.
Well, yeah. Now, mind you, I've been getting a teeny tiny taste of it because, of course, my daughter Alice is down in Long Beach, and she's been talking about how they've been getting ash and that sort of thing down there. But how are you, Katie, and especially Nova, handling all this?
I mean, it's just like, wearing because we're in the valley, so it's just all that shit just settled in over the atmosphere. So it was crazy because we were seeing both fires sort of on either end of our neighborhood, and then that Sunset fire that happened last week as well, which if it had gone over the hill instead of down towards Sunset, we would have probably been cooked because we're pretty close to the hill on the other side. So it's probably set me buying a house back a good 25 years. So there's that too. Just again, what just happened to the real estate inventory out there?
But more to the point, the other thing, in fact, Brian Gahn, who up in Pasadena, also has been dealing with this, my co-host, and looking at Lucasfilm. But Alice has been telling me about how if you're anywhere in Southern California, your phone is just blowing up all the time with either information from local officials and state officials, and Alice, for example, 4:00 in the morning got an evacuation notice that they then rescinded like 5 minutes later. Like, we're so sorry, we sent it to the entire county and we meant to send it to a specific neighborhood. And you've got to have been dealing with that sort of stuff as well.
Oh yeah. Right? Did she tell you about the one that went out and then immediately it was like, disregard that warning? I mean, it's been crazy. Thank God for this app called Watch Duty, which I'm sure you've heard about, which just is tracking all the fires, all the evacuations, where you are and what zone. There's evacuation ready and then evacuation warning, which is like then you have to go. It's been terrible. And I've been coordinating with my co-host from Light the Fuse, lives in Encino, and his family had evacuated to Santa Barbara. So, I mean, if you don't like sleeping, it's been a great week. If you wanted to do anything like relax or, have a restful sleep, you just can't because you're just so on edge about everything. But
no,
luckily
understood.
nothing happened to us so far. Both Jim and I encourage you to donate to, there are so many charities available online that are very easily accessible. A lot of people in the animation industry have been affected by this. I don't really want to name names exactly, but
no, I get that. I do. And in fact, that we will, in the weeks ahead, continue to shine a spotlight. Because face it, the recovery for this, it's going to be years.
I don't know how they think they're going to have an Olympics in 2024, Jim. Or not 2028. Yeah, I mean, I just I don't understand how that's going to happen. But
well, and in fact, that's what's been especially interesting. Because face it, how much of California's economy is driven by tourism. And the notion of, well, what do you do? I mean, for example, just today, I got a notice from Knott's, and they have a Peanuts themed event. In fact, they're going to be celebrating 75 years of Snoopy, and it's being held at the park. I want to say February 8th through the 9th, but there's going to be this amazing display of artwork that the Charles Schulz Museum has evidently sent down to be in the park. But at the same time, conversely, my friend Angela, who you've met, who's an event planner, and we were just out this past weekend, and she was talking about how she's got an event that she's supposed to be staging in Newport Beach in March. And she just felt terrible because she had to call down there and literally do the event planning thing of, well, I'm going to need a breakout room and I'm going to need a breakfast room and registration table at a time when this hotel is full of people who frankly fled from other parts of Southern California and are holed up in this hotel and don't know when they're going to be able to leave because they don't know if they're going to be able to get back to their homes.
Yeah, somebody told me that a lot of people went to the Sheraton Universal, which is a hotel you and I are very familiar with.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And they said it was like a kennel. There were so many dogs there with people that had fled their homes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just been it's been surreal, and it's an overwhelming feeling of grief. That when you start to think about it, it's hard to kind of pull yourself out. So I appreciate us doing the show, Jim, a little late, but here we are. And thanks for hanging in there with me.
No. It's been
a lot.
Just I can't imagine having gone through the past week because again, this started Tuesday morning last week. And all right. Anyway, as Drew mentioned, there's a lot of wonderful organizations. If you're feeling like you need to do something, great place to start at the American Red Cross. Likewise, there's World Central Kitchen, that Chef Jose Andres outfit who's feeding people on the ground right now. And we were just, of course, you were talking about the kennel aspect of Universal Sheraton. Also want to point out the Best Friends Animal Society is taking care of a lot of people's pets. They got separated through the fires. So 3 organizations to start with there. Anyway, folks, we're just going to now, just after acknowledging the wildfires, we're going to continue our usual show here. That said, we will keep a spotlight on what's going on out west, and especially after the fires are out and the rebuilding begins, want to do whatever we can help here. So anyway, to get to the news such as it is, because so many things have been shut down or rescheduled or that sort of thing, but also want to acknowledge Fine Tuning's new sponsor, which is the DVC rental store. If you're planning your next trip to Walt Disney World, you can save some serious scratch by renting DVC points through the DVC rental store. Imagine staying at a deluxe resort for the fraction of the cost. Total game changer. All right, and if you already own,
can I get some points, Jim? I need to get out of here. I'm sick of this place. I gotta go. I gotta go to beautiful Walt Disney World. Yeah.
If you feel that way, you should check out the DVC resale market. They are the leader in secondary market with over 70,000 satisfied members. And if you're looking to buy or sell your DVC points, they make the process seamless. Okay, so it seems weird to talk about people going to the movies after what's going on out west, but we typically start our news segment by taking a look at the box office. And this past weekend, domestically, Mufasa was number 2 in North America with 14.2 million in ticket sales. That's just a wee bit less than Den of Thieves 2, which had an opening weekend of 15 million. Sonic the Hedgehog 3, appropriately enough, was third at the box office with 11.4 million in ticket sales. And then Moana 2 was fifth in that same territory with 6.5 in ticket sales too. But to put this in bigger picture, Moana 2 right now sits at 990 million worldwide and is supposed to blow through the $1 billion box office barrier sometime later this week. Mufasa, on the other hand, 543 million worldwide, and Sonic is currently sitting at 385 million worldwide. Wanted to also mention Flow, which Drew and I have talked about previously on the show. That's the animated feature that took home the Best Animated Golden Globe earlier this month. That's still out in 247 theaters in North America. Sold 300,000 worth of tickets this past weekend, and is currently sitting at 3 million in ticket sales in North America since November. And still need to see that movie. Still need to get out and see that. On the other hand, a movie if you held a gun to my head, I'm not going to go see, and that's Screamboat, the Steamboat Willie inspired horror movie that got put.
I think we should go together, Jim. I think we should.
Well, the interesting thing is, if they'd stuck to their original plan, we could have gone out. What is it? Next week it was supposed to be in theaters, January 25th. However, Iconic Events Releasing, the company that will be releasing Screamboat, just pushed its release date back to April of this year for some reason.
Darn it, Jim.
There we go. And by the way, have you seen the log line for this thing? That it's what a late night boat ride in New York City becomes a struggle for survival when a seemingly harmless mouse transforms into a dangerous monster, and passengers must fight to stay alive. And you saw the image, right?
Yeah. Is this from the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey?
Gotta be because the image that they released just the other day is of a man-sized mouse wearing a Steamboat Willie-esque hat who's wielding a harpoon.
Mickey Mouse is kind of a jerk in that short, so it's not the most far-fetched thing.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
All right. Excellent point. And speaking of release date changes, Shrek 5, which had previously been announced as arriving in theaters on July 1st of next year, 2026, just got its release date pushed back to December 23rd, 2026. And to fill that hole in their summer release schedule, Universal just moved up Minions 3, which, by the way, did you see that there's another name being bandied about for this, Mega Minions? So the superhero characters from Despicable Me 4?
Oh, I did not hear that. I can dig into that.
Okay, cool.
For you.
All right.
Yeah.
But anyway, Minions 3 had its release date moved up from June 30th, 2007 to July 1st of 2026. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I mean, it's basically the exact same release date, only a year earlier. And we've talked about this previously on the show, Drew, that the Despicable Me Minion films really stick closely to that July 4th weekend. They've historically done really, really well at that point. On the other hand, what do you make of Shrek 5, a holiday slot? These things have always opened in May, June, July. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it was a combination of things. I think they needed more time. I mean, another aspect of this release was that they announced that Conrad Vernon, who directed Shrek 2, would be joining Walt Dorn as a director. So I think it's that. I also think it would have been coming out 2 weeks after Toy Story 5, which I don't think anybody really wants to. And historically, the Illumination movies have benefited greater than a DreamWorks movie in terms of getting that kind of halo. You'll remember that Kung Fu Panda 4 came out in March of last year, so they stayed away. But Despicable Me 4 came out right after Inside Out 2 and did very well.
It's an excellent
I think
point.
that the audiences are different enough. I think if you're asking people to choose between Shrek 5 and Toy Story 5, I think that's a harder sell. And I think that, Wicked showed just how lucrative that kind of holiday corridor can be for an all ages film.
Excellent point.
I think Universal is high on that too as well. So, I mean, I think it's a great decision. I think it's gonna feel very special to see a Shrek movie at Christmas, and yeah, I'm all about it. I think this is a great move. I'm curious how you knock off a year of production on an animated feature to slot Minions in there. You and I both know that I think Brad Bird would probably have still wanted that extra year on Incredibles 2 when it switched dates with Toy Story 4.
Oh yeah.
But
sometimes you got to deliver the goods when they need the goods.
Yes.
Now, speaking, you just mentioned Conrad Vernon coming on board as a director in Shrek 5. Did you see that news about him and George R.R. Martin, that they're getting together to launch
the Bizarre?
Yeah, an adult animation studio. I thought that was kind of interesting.
It was kind of interesting. It seems a little iffy, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, the idea behind it is that they kind of find and exploit kind of untested animation professionals or, young animators. And then there seems to be an AI component too, which of course, turns my stomach. But I'm very curious. I mean, I enjoy the people that they've got lined up, but I don't know how much of it is, kind of a tech play more than an animation studio. As you and I have been around long enough, Jim, to see these weirdo companies pop up and attach a lot of talent and then disappear into the night,
All true. Okay. So we'll keep an eye on that. And by the way, speaking of schedule changes, notice something interesting going on over in Fox in February. The Simpsons, which again is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year, is temporarily being pulled out of its lead sled dog position in that network's long-running Sunday night, what do they call it? The Animation Domination programming block.
Yeah.
So Family Guy is moving into Simpsons' usual Sunday night at 8 slot. Followed then by Grimsburg, the animated series now in its second season at Fox. And after that is Great North, which is 5 seasons now on Fox, followed by Krapopolis. It's also season 2 at Fox. Now, what's kind of interesting is that The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers, which 15 seasons now on Fox, are out of the Animation Domination programming block, supposedly through February sweeps. And I was just wondering, given that we were just talking about those only for Disney Plus episodes of The Simpsons, what do you make of this? Is this long range a new business model, or things moving around?
Yeah, I actually didn't know about this until you brought it up. I mean, I understand the desire to kind of spotlight newer animated things, but as you have pointed out, there's some of these things have been on a lot longer than you would expect.
Well, yeah. Now, Family Guy, 23rd season, but it's 25th anniversary this year. So just kind of interesting.
But the corporate push and pull with The Simpsons is going to be very interesting over the next few years. With not only Fox, but also Universal because of the parks. And you and I are both hearing very interesting things about what's going on.
That we are.
There, I would say Go ride that ride if you love it.
There we go. There we go.
Right?
Not saying that there's a ticking clock, but 2028 is coming up, folks. I'm just going to say that.
Jim, did you watch Stugo, by the way? The new Disney Channel show?
No. Oh, what is this?
It looks wonderful. It's on I don't know. I haven't watched it yet, but because it aired on Disney Channel and then I think was on Disney Plus the last couple of days, but I've been a little scattered. But it looks really great, and we love an original Disney Channel animated series. Yeah, whatever it is, please
we'll take it.
Give it to us.
It. And of course, Drew has been a little scattered because of what's going on out west. And speaking of continuing our Wildfire related stuff, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has twice now over the past week. Extended the Oscar nomination voting period, right? It was actually supposed to have been completed on the 12th, then got pushed out to today to the 14th, and now January 17th.
Friday, I think.
Friday. Okay.
Yeah, 17th, which is Friday. Mm-hmm. Yeah, from what I understand, they just didn't have very many votes.
Geez, what?
So I think they would have actually done it if they had enough, but it just, there are so many movies to watch, and in every category which you are assigned them, you have to watch, like 40 minutes or something of a feature, and I think at least half of a short. So this is a big time commitment for these voters, and if you're struggling or have lost your house or have evacuated and don't have access to the Academy screener app, I mean, it can be really difficult. So
totally.
Yeah, I feel for everybody. I mean, the last thing I did before the fires, Jim, was I hosted a Q&A with our good friend Kelsey Mann for Inside Out 2.
Very
cool. It was a lovely chat.
Okay.
Yeah. So
any particular stories shared at the event?
Well, what was fun was I got to do it with both writers, Dave and Meg, as well as Andrea Dathman, who did the music. And I found out, I did not know this, Jim, and I want to share it with all our readers, that Andrea, who did the music for Inside Out 2, is actually the voice of the Triple Dent gum commercial from the first movie. So she is a real legacy Inside Out player. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's cool. That's a really earworm. Okay.
Yes.
But that said, again, get Oscar nomination pushed off. But again, it's still award season. And in fact, Visual Effects Society just announced the nominees for its 23rd VES Awards. And Wild Robot, top contender in the animation category, with 5 nominations. And those are Outstanding Visual Effects in an Animated Feature, Outstanding Character in an Animated Feature. That's for Roz, the title character, the Wild Robot. And then they also got recognized for Outstanding Environment and Animated Feature, and again, The Forest, The Island, and Wild Robot, and finally, Outstanding Effects Simulation and Animated Feature, and then Compositing and Lighting in an Animated Feature. And by the way, I am sitting here again. Based on Drew's advice, I finally ordered, the high-def Blu-ray and digital copy of The Wild Robot, and I'm literally looking out toward my driveway waiting for it. It's supposed to be delivered today. I was going to get it.
Well, Jim, before we move on, can we acknowledge that a little movie called Ultraman Rising also got several nominations, including Outstanding Visual Effects in an Animated Feature?
Oh, no.
I mean, come on.
Well, I stand corrected. And if you want to learn more about that, there's a lovely book, The Art and Making of Ultraman Rising, which comes out January 25th of this month. Am I correct?
You are correct.
There we go.
Yes, it's coming out. It looks great.
Okay.
There's a lot of text. I apologize.
No.
Get your monocle out to read all these words. But yeah.
And speaking of reading, thanks to the generosity of friends and family, got a lot of Christmas gift cards and ordered up a pile of books. Just got my copy of Disney's Hercules: The Art of Gerald's Scarf yesterday. This thing is a behemoth of a book, but Scarf tells some amazing stories about working on Hercules. Likewise, just this morning, got my copy of DreamWorks, The Art of DreamWorks Dogman, which doesn't come out till tail end of this month, right?
Yeah, I'm supposed to see it a little later this week, so I will report back on the next episode.
And
I'm sure.
just before Drew and I got started here tonight, my copy of In Gad We Trust, which is Mr. Gad, friend of the show, refers to as a tell some, not tell all. And by the way, we're going to share a story from that book on the second half of today's show about Josh initial involvement in Frozen. But first, before Drew and I do that, there's this.
Hi, here's your report.
Thanks, Jane. I wish I could hire a whole team of yous.
Try posting a job on LinkedIn. It's the world's largest professional network. Unlike resumes, LinkedIn gives a real-time view into a candidate's skills, experiences, and more.
Huh, let's do it. You're irreplaceable, Jane, but another you would be great.
Find your perfect match with LinkedIn. Post your free job at linkedin.com/achieve. That's linkedin.com/achieve. Terms and conditions apply.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
And we're back. And again, I don't mean to harp on this, folks. I'm still trying to wrap my head around about everything that's happened because of all the wildfires out west. And as Drew mentioned, we don't want to get into specific names of that sort of thing, but there are a lot of animators and Imagineers who were especially impacted by the Eaton fire. What is it? 14,000 acres consumed up there around Altadena, and it still was only 33% contained as of Monday. But the other thing worth noting here is when an event of this size goes on, a lot of stuff gets overlooked. A lot of stuff just by accident because we're overtaken by events, and people who should be paid attention to get their due get overlooked. And Drew, well, you saw what Steven Anderson, the director of Meet the Robinsons and Winnie the Pooh, he just shared through social media about a good friend of his that he lost, right?
Yeah, it was a writer on Monsters at Work, which Steven worked on, and also she was a writer on Meet the Robinsons, and she passed away. I'm trying to find her name here. She passed away, and there's no real details on what happened exactly.
Yeah, I want to say,
do you
Michelle
know?
Spitz? Does that sound right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and
do you know what happened to her?
No, I mean, I see. That's the thing. I've been doing the exact same thing. I mean, you hammer on her name, and you get the IMDb information, and clearly this is someone who meant a lot to Steven. In fact, he illustrated a children's book that she wrote last year, and
yes, that's right.
Trying to chase that down as well. And speaking of books, want to stress here because we really need to bring Steven on the show.
I have messaged with Steven about coming on the show. I will follow up with him.
Because he's the author of Disney in Between, which covers the history of the company from basically the day Walt died in 1966 and Eisner coming on board in 1984. It's the least reported part of Disney history. I've been waiting for this book my entire adult life, and just would love to get Steve on the show to talk about the research he did. Because when you look at it, when you see who he interviewed for this thing, it's like, oh, this is the book we've been waiting for forever. The one that tells us where the bodies are buried.
Yes, and it was published by our good friend Dave Bossert's Old Mill Press.
It was.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, Mr. Anderson actually boarded for a couple of months on Frozen. In fact, he just shared on social media some of the scenes that he worked on. It turns out he was the one who worked on the scene where young Anna and young Elsa are in the castle ballroom, where Elsa's demonstrating her ice magic and something goes horribly wrong.
Did you see that thing on Twitter, Jim, about the concept art versus the final movie that was going around, about how esoteric and interesting the characters from Frozen looked like before they kind of were finalized? It's very interesting.
All right. I will have to check that out. Now, speaking of early Frozen, I got my copy of Josh Gad's In Gad We Trust Today, and was doing a rush read out ahead of Drew and I talking tonight. And I also want to bring up the fact that Josh right now is actually out doing a book tour. And in fact, he was on The View just this morning talking about the fact that he had a family live out in L.A. And he was like, I can't go and do this. And his wife was like, no, you have to. It's your book tour. Yeah, I got to get out there and do this. But the part of the book that I cracked open to, because again, I've always been fascinated by this, was literally it's from Thursday, September 9th, 2009, and it's the first reading of the script of Anna and the Snow Queen. And what's interesting, Drew and I have talked at length about this version of Frozen. This is Chris Buck, and at this point, the Snow Queen is the villain of the film, and she has an army of snowmen at her disposal, and the commander of this army is a strange little buck-toothed snowman with a significant lisp and an undying love for his evil queen, and he's supposed to be sort of the quintessential Disney villain sidekick like Iago and LeFou, and that it's Olaf. And now, what was kind of interesting is that they were doing a table read of this version of Frozen because John Lasseter, who was the then head of Pixar and Disney Animation, he wanted to hear the script read out loud and just get a sense, of what was working and what wasn't. And Drew, some of the stuff that Josh shares here, I've never heard before. For example, at this point for this table read, it's Jennifer Goodwin from Once Upon a Time and, of course, Zootopia, who's reading for Anna, who's the hero of the piece, whereas Jason Biggs is reading for the role of Kristoff, the love interest, and Megan Mullally from Will and Grace is playing the villain and the title character, the Snow Queen.
That makes sense. I mean, this was when she was more Cruella de Vil-ish and had a living mink coat.
Yeah, but what's kind of interesting about this is that I've heard two things. One, that they were definitely interested in her for the role, but at the same time, there was a hope that they could get Bette Midler to voice the Snow. Because again, as you mentioned, she was more a Cruella de Vil kind of. She was an old show queen version of the Snow Queen. So again, dressed in ermine, that sort of thing. But yeah, that evidently Megan was there because it's like, we can't get Bette. We at least had Megan. But anyway, what was interesting during this table read, songs that had been written for this film by Alan Menken and Glenn Slater got played, and Josh in Gad We Trust shares the names of these songs. We had Love Can't Be Denied, which was a traditional Disney love ballad. We have a Stop and Smell the Roses, which was some sort of song that Anna and Elsa shared. And then because, you got to have a villain song, they have something called Come In From the Cold. And then this one, Drew, we have to chase this down at some point. The big comic number called We're Having You for Dinner, which is evidently a group number for this film that was somehow a combination of Les Poissons from The Little Mermaid and Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast. So it's like, I got to hear that one. Anyway, Josh talks about how for the villainous version of Olaf, he did a voice that basically was a combination of Buddy Hackett and Wallace Shawn's Vizzini from The Princess Bride, and evidently really leaned into the lisp because of Olaf's buck teeth. And evidently John Lasseter just flat out loved Josh's villainous take on Olaf, and it was like, we'll get back to you. We can't wait for all of us to work together on this movie. But then November 25th, 2009 happens. The Princess Frog goes out into theaters and doesn't do what Disney had anticipated. And evidently, on the heels of that, Tangled was far enough along that they couldn't stop it, that had to keep going forward. Whereas, hang on, maybe we don't know how to do princess movies anymore. So they actually put Anna and the Snow Queen on hold. And so Josh, who had dreamed of being a voice in a Disney animated film since 1992, when his mom took him to go see Aladdin, was like, oh man, this is slipping away from me. But as a consolation prize, in the same window of time, Jeffrey Katzenberg reaches out. Jeffrey sees Josh on Broadway in Book of Mormon and says, hey, we're working on this project called Me and My Shadow, and would you be interested in working on it? And so Josh goes out to the DreamWorks campus and they pitch him on the project, which is supposed to be this groundbreaking mix of hand-drawn animation and CG. And Josh is supposed to voice this character called Daniel, who is this pretty guarded and insular adult whose life supposedly gets turned upside down when his shadow, was supposed to be voiced by Bill Hader, comes to life and recruits Daniel. He needs Daniel's help to fend off a nefarious force that is bringing the shadow world into the real world. And Josh also shared that Kate Hudson was supposed to voice Daniel's love interest. But anyway, this project is a go project at DreamWorks. In fact, they have a December 2013 release date locked in. But Josh's life suddenly gets complicated in November of 2011 when Tangled finally comes out and is Disney's biggest hit in years. And in the wake of that, Anna and the Snow Queen suddenly gets turned back on at Disney. But now Jennifer Lee has been brought in to co-direct with Chris Buck, evidently because of all the great work she did on Wreck-It Ralph. But now it's no longer a story about the villainous Snow Queen. It's about two sisters, and Bobby Lopez and his wife Kristen Anderson Lopez come in and are writing the score. And here's the other part that Josh shares in his book. What's interesting is that Jennifer takes a look at the earlier script and it's like, oh, we got to get rid of this Olaf character. She doesn't need a villainous sidekick, but it turns out there's this 15-minute long animation test that's been done of Olaf where they pulled audio from an appearance that Josh made on New Girl, the sitcom from the late. Okay. And that makes Jennifer reconsider. So it's like, all right, okay, hang on. What if he's not the villainous sidekick? What if he's the comical relief? Or better yet, he's the glue that keeps the relationship between the sisters, Anna and Elsa, going. but here's where it gets really interesting. Frozen is slated to go out in November of 2013, 2 weeks ahead of Me and My Shadow. And Josh is in a town car going to the first table read for the film that is now called Frozen, when his agent reaches out and says that Jeffrey Katzenberg has said in no uncertain terms that you can't be a voice in both of these movies. And Josh, literally, they have to turn the car around and go home and try to work this out. And so Josh calls Jeffrey, personally, and Katzenberg is like, well, look, you can't. He says, but Jeffrey, I'm the lead in your movie, and I'm just a sidekick in this film. And Jeffrey says, no, it would be confusing to audiences. But Gad persists, and eventually Jeffrey comes back, and it's one of these things. He sets this sort of impossible set of conditions that, all right, you can be in both films if you agree going into this that you can't do anything to promote Frozen. And more to the point, your name can't be mentioned in the marketing at all for this Disney animated feature. And also that DreamWorks Animation would have first priority when it came to scheduling Josh's time in regard to any animated project. And Drew, I think right off the bat, you would recognize the interesting parallels between the conditions that, what was it, Robin Williams set for Disney in regard to Aladdin and the Barry Levinson movie Toys.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, that was a very big deal.
It was.
But also, Katzenberg was always stealing people for DreamWorks movies.
He was.
He just didn't like it the other way around.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so while this is all going on, Disney, for a time, actually offers the role of Olaf to Christopher Mintz-Plasse, McLovin.
Sure.
But anyway, what ends up happening is evidently Christopher had far too high a quote in regard to animation work. So Lasseter, clear out of the blue, calls Josh and says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to agree to Jeffrey's terms. And people are going to find it interesting to try to figure out who it is that's voicing Olaf. So he goes in, and the very first thing that Josh records on Frozen is in summer. And interesting little side story that Josh shares in the book is that he went into the movie recording in summer, assuming, okay, the rules still apply from the villainous version of Olaf. He's got his buck teeth, so he's going to have a lisp. And so Josh says, what's interesting is go back and listen to In Summer, because for some reason Olaf lisps during that song. It's only when he came in 3 or 4 days later and came in to record his first lines of dialogue for Olaf. And by the way, the first lines of dialogue he recorded for the film were, "Hi, I'm Olaf and I like warm hugs." But it was only during that session they're like, "Why are you lisping?" Well, he's got buck teeth. No, he doesn't do that. So yeah, that if you listen to In Summer, that's still the lisping Olaf. But anyway, shared this story because, again, it's one of many that Josh shares in his wonderful new book, In Gad We Trust. And by the way, Mr. Gad, as we mentioned, is out doing a book tour right now. In fact, it's killing me that tonight he's down in New York City at Town Hall, and at this event, he's being interviewed by Richard Kind.
Legend.
Yeah, killing me to miss that one. But tomorrow night, January 15th, he's in Philadelphia at Perlman Hall, where Alicia Verderelli is interviewing him. Then on the 16th, Josh travels to Chicago, where he's at the Athenaeum Center, and that event is being moderated by Chris Jones. And then for all our friends down in Orlando, on January 21st, he's at the Dr. Phillips Center. And Ashley Eckstein of Star Wars fame will be moderating that event. So, again, cannot recommend highly enough. And again, this was so much fun to read just in the 2 hours before Drew and I sat down to do this podcast. And there are lots more Disney-related stories. Josh talks about working on the live-action Beauty and the Beast. Josh also talks about his concerns and hesitation about doing a Frozen sequel. Really, 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 and never mind his time on Broadway and his other projects. In fact, the book ends with a wonderful note from Mel Brooks, who Josh's next project is with, but we'll talk about that later. But speaking of books, though, again, want to remind you, we just talked about Drew's The Art and Making of Ultraman Rising, which comes out later this month. But also, I want to remind you that the Art of Disney's Amphibia is coming out from the Disney Manga Press on March 25th of this year. So if you haven't already pre-ordered those two, please do so. And also want to remind you about Drew's other podcast, Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he co-hosts with Charles Hood. And that is coming back in a big way in 2025. Which only makes sense given that the next Mission Impossible movie, Final Reckoning, arrives in theaters on May 23rd of this year, 2025. And do we have a specific return date for the show yet? Or
we do not, but it should be in the next month. I think I can safely say that.
Cool.
So all you folks out there just chomping at the bit. Soon,
okay. And speaking of podcasts, I want to remind you about the shows we have here at Jim Hill Media. We, of course, have Disney Dish, which I do with Len Testa. Likewise, we have the Epic Universal podcast, which I do with Eric Hersey, who produces a lot of the shows here at Jim Hill Media. I also do I Want That Too with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren Hersey. And very soon, Brian Gunn and I will be doing a brand new episode of Looking at Lucasfilm. In fact, we will be talking about the series finale for Skeleton Crew, which drops tonight, right?
Yes, I need to go and watch it, Jim.
Okay, well then let's wrap this up. And then, of course, we have the Manufacturing the Magic, the theme park history podcast that we host here from Noah Valladolid and his lovely bride, Shelley. And let's see, as we close out, I want to thank Eric Hersey and David Gray for the great job they do producing this podcast. Folks, if we could ask a favor, if you could please head on over to Apple Podcast and rate and review, well, not just this show, Fine Tooning, but also Light the Fuse. That would be helpful. Social media-wise, Drew, where can the nice folks find you?
They can find me on Instagram and X, sadly, until I work up the courage to leave it, at Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt. So please follow me there. And Jim, where can people find you?
Well, I'm also still on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Likewise, Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. And just, again, one final reminder, folks. Again, folks out west are still dealing with these wildfires, and if you are in a position to help, please make a donation to the American Red Cross or World Kitchens or the Best Friends Animal Society there. And again, thinking of friends and family like Drew out west, and everybody, please stay safe. So anyway, on behalf of Mr. Taylor, thanks for listening to this week's Fine Tuning, and we will be back soon.